Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. It is Thursday, May 11th. The Elite Series of the Disc Golf Pro Tour picks back up tomorrow with the OTB Open. We're heading out to Stockton, California. The West Coast Swing starts right now. And Josh, I wanted to throw this out to you real quick. There's a real cool promotion going on at the OTB Open. Take a look. If you bring your Zuka cart, Josh, and you're walking it around as a spectator at the OTB Open, you could win. You could win. You could win a $250 golden ticket voucher and potentially a free giveaway item. You might win a gift card. So, Josh, is this enough?
Oh, my gosh.
To get you to show up with your bag and walk around as a spectator?
No, it's not. It's not even close. I don't have a Zuka cart, first and foremost, but here's the one caveat. If you roll up and if I were at OTB and I saw somebody with a Zuka cart, I would probably harass them for it. If they were, chill and we were chatting, I'd give them a hard time. If they opened up that Zuka cart and it was just shoved full of drinks and snacks, then I respect it. It's fine. It's just a cooler rolling around with a seat.
Exactly.
I will respect it. But if you open that up,
Zuka has real utility as a spectating tool because you can use it as a cooler for your beers and a seat when you're sitting on the fairway.
And heck, if you bring your pound bag and fill it up with drinks and snacks, that's fine with me. But if you open up that bag and it is full of discs, so help me, get that out of my way. It's not needed. I don't care about it. Why is it there?
Josh is going to assault somebody on the course.
It's unbelievable, man. And now they're encouraging it.
Okay. I also want to address this. Somebody in the YouTube comments says, "Nice haircut, Charlie. Just shave it all off next time. Don't try to hold on to the little bit of hair you got. The Knicks will lose the series in 5. New Yorkers are not jumping around anymore in the streets. Reality is sinking in fast. Anyways, the show is pretty good as always. Great info on Gannon Prodigy and Natalie OTB." Well, I appreciate the comment there at the end, but the rest of it. Okay, first of all, what am I supposed to do? I already shaved the hair off as much as I can. What I don't have, I'm not going to sit and bick my head every day. I'm sorry. It's just, it takes too much time. Bald folks out there, email me, upshot@ultiworld.com. What should I do? Because I'm not trying to hold on to anything. I got it as short as I can get it. Number 2, Knicks in 7. Knicks fans were on. I was out on 7th Avenue last night. People were going crazy. Side Talk NYC was out there with their cameras.
So, Charlie, my question for you: how confident are you in Knicks in 7?
I mean, I said this to my buddies last night. If the Knicks can win here tonight and they can figure something out, there's no reason we cannot win 3 straight. We are the superior basketball team.
Okay. Would you? And
I got to give credit because Eric Spoelstra. Hang on.
Okay.
Eric Spoelstra, very smart coach. They have executed effectively, and they have beat the Knicks at their own game. They have been out rebounding us, which is insane. So I feel like we saw last night that if we pick the pace up on offense, and if we actually get rebounds, that the Heat just don't have the shooting to beat us. There's a reason they came in through the play-in. So, can we hold Jimmy to under 20 points again? I don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard to win in Miami. But if we win Game 6, the Garden is going to be so insane for Game 7, there's no way we lose.
Are you confident enough that you would want to double down on your bet? Because remember, Lakers are up 3-2, and it's going back to Los Angeles on Friday night. So I'm feeling pretty good about the Lakers series, assuming Anthony Davis plays. Ham said that he's pretty confident he should, but did leave with the head injury after getting elbowed in the face. So assuming Anthony Davis plays, like, I'm pretty confident in the Lakers. Are you confident enough that you want to double down on our $10 bet?
So you just want to raise the stakes, basically?
Yeah, just make it 20. And remember, the bet goes for whichever team makes it furthest. And if both are eliminated at the same time, then it's a wash. So if Knicks do lose, but Lakers also lose, it's just a wash.
Right. I mean, I've got to be honest. I don't feel like raising the stakes is in my favor right now.
I don't think it is either.
Let's talk after Game 6. If we go to Game 7, let's talk.
All right. Okay, all right.
I do believe. I feel like, Lakers get 2 shots at it, including a home game coming up next.
That's correct. So. Yeah. Yeah, that is correct.
We've got a great show for you today. We're going to get you ready for the OTB Open. Shawn Jack and Shawn Mercy will be joining us once again. Always a pleasure to have them on. And we've had Shawn Jack on this show for years and years at this point, and looking forward to talking with them about what's going on at the tournament this year. There have been a lot of course changes. They got rid of the 2-meter rule entirely, which was in play on some holes. There's a lot of changes to the FPO layout. So we'll talk to the Shawns about all of that and what's going on the spectator side of things. So this is the most forward-thinking spectating tournament in the country. So we'll talk to them about that as well. We also got a 30-second rule coming up for you. We're going to make our picks. I can tell you I've got some pretty spicy picks this week. And we're going to get you caught up on anything else that's going on in the Natalie Ryan case. As we record this morning of Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, there's not been a ruling yet from the judge on the temporary restraining order that would determine whether or not Natalie can compete this weekend. I'm not going to say more about it right now. We're going to wait for the ruling, which should be out in a few hours. We're going to reconvene and record some more at that point. For now, we're going to take a break. We'll either come back with some Natalie Ryan talk, or we will come back with the Shawns. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to The Upshot.
Pound's the best of the best. It's the quality, the craftsmanship, the vision for what a bag could be. Let's start from the beginning. I didn't choose Pound, I chose Levi. I trusted Levi to make the best bag possible.
He's always trying to innovate. He wants it to be perfect. And I think he's the kind of guy that nothing's ever perfect.
I trust the product. I trust the people behind the product.
At this point, I don't think anyone's disputing that it's the best made bag.
Joining us now on the Upshot are the co-TDs of the OTB Open, Shawn Jack and Shawn Mercy. Shawn, welcome.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Always happy to be here.
It's a good annual tradition that we have here with this interview. I see you're in the OTB studios. It's very nice to be able to have like a professional setting for the podcast interview.
It's pretty awesome.
One of the many perks of working with only the best discs. You get only the best studio.
So we're now, I don't know, like 18 hours away from the start of the tournament. How's everything looking so far? And, as you get ready for a hot weekend in Stockton.
As usual, it's coming together just in time. But we're looking really good. The course is looking really, really good as of last night. And pretty much all the infrastructure is built out. But yeah, we're going to be ready, and it's going to be awesome.
I'd love to. I mean, this is something that I think the OTB Open has become known for. But I'd love to hear about kind of the fan zones that you guys are planning this time. What the experience is going to be like for those, both VIP as well as the general admission. I mean, this is something that you guys, I know, take a lot of pride in. So I'm excited to hear about the developments.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So we redesigned hole 1 for the spectators. Last year it was a par 4, par 5 FPO. The players would throw like a massive stall hyzer, and then they would disappear around the corner, and then you didn't see what happened. Plus, the largest set of bleachers that we rent was like in the middle of Mercury. It was just blasting in the sun, and no one really used them. So we moved the stage back and put the bleachers under this beautiful giant oak tree and made hole 1 a par 3 that's just under 500 feet for the men and 340 for the women.
Yeah, 340, 350.
So if you're on site watching, you actually can see the players hole out and see the men throw a 500-foot golf shot, which is pretty exciting. That allowed us to make hole 2 go into hole 1's green from last year, which was one of the prettiest ones that we have. And now that's like a really pure park-style par 4, low ceiling, which is kind of our brand. So I'm excited about those changes. And now everything, including the vendor village and the stage and the bleachers, is all on top of each other. So it's a really fun, festive atmosphere. You guys know we have Party Island to Party Peninsula. That's going to be a little bit on steroids this year, where we've rented a 600-plus square foot stage that has railings all the way around, and we'll have 4 MVP tents on top. So that's a VIP viewing deck. I was on top of it last night, and it provides sight lines of at least 5, if not 7 holes, and just a really great way to take in the action. We have a true island hole this year for the men. For the women, it's an island hole after the second shot on hole 12. That's our version of hole 8 at Maple, and we've installed a set of bleachers there. More vendors. We have something that's really exciting called Tech Alley this year in the vendor village, where we have Tech Disc, which is like a widget that goes on your Frisbee that tells you how fast you throw it and the RPMs and the angle. We have Disc.ai, which will do form review. Ideo Sports is going to be there. And then a new company called Pure Disc Golf that is kind of like diet social media for our sports. So they'll all be side by side. And we have 2 commemorative beers. That's pretty exciting. I had the Kolsch last night, which was tasty and delicious. I'm trying to think, what am I missing? Saturday night, we have Fly Marts with all the players selling on site, or several of them. So I'm pretty excited about this year. Was about tightening the screws, not really changing anything significantly, but just improving on what we've been doing in the past.
How are ticket sales looking right now?
I just looked before I headed over here. We just crested 1,100. Last year was at 12. I think based upon like the hockey stick growth, that we'll probably get to just north of 1,500 for about a 20% increase over a year. So not the jumps that we've had in the past. I think that, that growth trajectory is going to level out a little bit.
Sure. So, as kind of like a parallel track to this whole tournament coming together, there's a lawsuit Natalie Ryan filed against the PDGA and the Pro Tour, and also your event production team. And we actually still don't know the results of the restraining order case that was pending this week, and whether or not Natalie is going to be sort of required by the court to be allowed to play in this event. How have you all been handling this topic? Do you have the option to make your own decision about allowing Natalie to play or not, or is that all Pro Tour side discussion?
Well-crafted question, Charlie. I don't know. We're just moving ahead as if the tournament there will be no changes. As of, when I sat down 10 minutes ago, we have not heard the judge's ruling. We're preparing for, both circumstances, and we'll move forward accordingly. But we're going to lean on the guidance of the PDGA and the Disc Golf Pro Tour. We're just a promoter running an event on the tour and following the rules.
Looking at course changes then, and moving over, you talked about hole 1 a little bit for MPO. FPO I know has been pretty significantly reduced, over 500 feet. Tell me a little bit about the FPO track. What are some of the biggest changes to expect? This is a pretty hard course for FPO, at least traditionally in the past. How's that look a little different this year?
Well, I think Leonard did a really good job of listening to the feedback after last year. 2022's layout was almost completely new. I think what it came down to is a lot of the holes just didn't allow for scoring, but it wasn't off by a whole lot. And so we added 1 new FPO tee specifically to make that hole better for them. And then we added 5 new basket locations. So we actually have 2 basket locations on 5 holes so that FPO actually could score on those holes as well. And I think, we kind of iterated quite a bit on that to try to find the right balance, acknowledging it takes, some effort and coordination to move baskets. It's a lot of work to install tee pads, but I think we came to a good overall result, and the feedback from the women so far this year has been excellent.
Just to give you some numbers, we had an amateur A tier last weekend. 1,000 rated round on the MPO layout was 2.5, 3 over, and on the FPO layout was 6 down. So women's layout is playing 8 strokes easier against 1,000 rated round or against par. So we're really excited about that change. So we might see the women's winner have a lower score than the men.
So that actually brings me to this week's over-under. And I want... one of you can help me set the line, and then we'll let Charlie and the other Shawn take the pick that they want. All right. So Shawn, Jack, you're going to help me set the line. Strokes, what's the margin of FPO winning score under par relative to the men's? The initial number I had was within 6 strokes, but
does it matter if it's above or below?
We get to make it. So
okay. I think FPO winner will be around 13 to 15 down. Okay. I mean, that's just based upon someone shooting 980, 990 golf.
Right.
And MPO should be 6 points a stroke. 10-6, that's 10, about 27 down.
Simon won last year with
12.
What, a 20?
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Is it a little easier 19 to score this year, or do you think that was just an abnormally low number?
I don't know.
I think it'll be a little... I mean, there's some more complexity to the course. I think there's some more risk, but I think there is also more scoring opportunities for MPO. A lot of it comes down to the wind, and I would guess that the wind affects FPO scores a little more than the men, but it's kind of hard to... because the wind typically is calmer in the morning when FPO is playing. It picks up throughout the day, and then kind of dies off at the end of the day as normal.
I talked to Eagle yesterday, and he said that if the wind was down, he could see an 11 or 12. And he participated in a triples challenge with Eric Oakley and James Proctor, and they shot 18 down, which was frustrating. They missed hole 1 and then eagled hole 6.
Wait, didn't you lose a bet?
I did. Yeah, I didn't think they'd be able to do that.
What number did you put?
I thought they'd shoot like 15 or 6. Yeah, I think I took the under on 16 and a half.
So do you think 10 strokes is... so it sounds like it might actually be quite a far line in difference.
Now that I did the math,
okay.
Yeah. 10 and a half.
10 and a half is the line?
Give me the under.
11.
You think they'll be closer together?
I think FPO is going to get it done. I think they'll be closer than 11.
Do you guys actually keep track of your bets?
Oh yeah.
Do you guys? Okay. It's as the viewer or the listener, it seems like you just have these constant bets where there's no like
we
totals.
I will admit that I don't know that we've fully updated the tracking website, but if you go to discgolf.ultiworld.com/upshot-picks, all of the picks and the over-unders are tracked.
I'm beating Charlie in picks right now, in case you were wondering.
I'm aware of that as an avid listener to the show.
Good. I wanted to make sure that comes across.
So when you think about like how this event has evolved over time, you know, it sounds like this year is going to look a lot like last year. Does it feel like you're now settled into like the way that you expected this event to be when you conceived of it, you know, however many years ago, and like now it's just a matter of trying to grow it over time, or are there more substantial changes in the future?
I think Shawn would hope desperately that there are not significant, substantial changes in the future at the course level. I want to thank Shawn, by the way. He's been living in Stockton for the last 6 weekends. He's pretty much in charge of the course, including installing 31 new tees.
31, yeah. No, sorry. We installed 31 tee pads last year, but we used temporary turf. So we had to pull it off, and then we went back in this year. We bought our own turf, and then we had to just basically refurbish everything that was done last year, but had to install 31 tee pads worth of turf, which is a lot. I think we were probably, as of now, around 1,000 person hours on the course.
And like almost $15,000, right?
Yeah, and the vast majority of that is on the tee pads. So total from last year and this year, we're probably at 2,200, 2,300 person hours and 25 approaching $30,000.
Yeah, in raw materials on a property that we don't own.
Yeah.
Which is just awesome. By the way, the tee pads, I want to give a brief shout out to Disc Concepts XDEF Pro Turf tees. They're the ones they had at North Cove and will also be at Worlds this year. And they're just awesome. They're super grippy. They were actually at the industry conference. And so like tee pads is one of those things where you don't get any praise if they're good, right? You only hear the inverse. And then as far as like the event scaling, I think this is the first year that I've not been nervous whatsoever as far as like the income statement. We've been able to kind of create like a mini Ledgestone program where MVP is allowing only the best discs to become essentially a distributor through other retailers. And we were able, with OTB's partnerships with other retailers and direct-to-consumer sales, to sell over 50,000 discs. Like not dollars worth, but 50,000 units of discs.
Wow.
And the event gets a royalty from both parties. So MVP and OTB pay us a royalty. So the amount of income that we've been able to generate this year is significant. Where our out of cash will go up. God forbid that Shawn and I will get our investments back. We're in the hole like 20,000 from like the initial SFOs. Pay some of our staff and maybe actually withdraw money from the organization, which we've never done yet. So on the income side, I'm thrilled. It's been awesome.
What's the royalty from those companies on those discs?
Anywhere between 50 cents and $1.
I'll take
roughly.
that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. 50 cents and $1.25.
Okay.
It depends, but yeah, ballpark. With sponsorship this year with those two companies, we've been able to raise over $100,000, including other local sponsors.
What are you expecting the total purse to be?
We actually haven't talked about that. So Shawn, I was thinking I think with player entries this year, we're going to be at roughly $50,000. And I think it's our first year that we should have a 6-figure purse. So I think we'll add a minimum of around 50 grand to get to 100K. I think last year, I'm not sure if you guys have it, was 80,000,
44 added
so I
cash.
So I think this year we'll be at 100 with 50 to 55 added cash. Our stage manager, Andy Rothschild, who works for the PDGA, did a query and found out the largest purse in California history with the 2011 World Championships.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like 112. And they also had like 500 players, though, so it was significantly more subsidized.
Well, all you got to do is throw another 12K in the pot, and you get it.
And that's the exact sentiment that I'm tired of. Is like, give it all to the pros, and I get it. Like, without them, we wouldn't be here. But at minimum, I am paying myself back from the investment I made, like in 2018 and 2019, and enjoying it. Like, we're gonna have celebratory dinners and whatnot, and invest back into the business, but hopefully this model is something that we can retain and move going forward and scale.
Mm-hmm. How important is the disc sales side of it? Because I feel like everybody that makes money in disc golf makes it because they sell Frisbees, and that's like the only thing that's keeping anybody afloat. And that means pros, obviously the manufacturers themselves, all these retail, like everybody is just getting a cut of these now $25 pieces of plastic, and that's what's like driving the entire industry. Because like what you just described, it makes it sound like that's where the profit margin is coming from. Is that right?
At least for our tournament, yeah, it's a program that works because MVP wrote us a big check, but OTB wrote them a significantly larger check to buy those discs, right? And then OTB gets paid, so it's an interesting machine. But at the same time, to like throw on my other hat, like I have a bunch of sponsors in the Disc Golf Pro Tour that are not retail or manufacturer, that are equipment or not endemic, where we've raised significant amount of money, and it has nothing to do with the disc royalty program. But I think it's both. I would love, obviously, as the VP of sales for the tour, to move away from that and not be so reliant on the industry itself. And we're seeing that now, with non-endemic partners like the Halal guys and Canna and Johnsonville and et cetera, et cetera.
You talked about making this an operation that is scalable. The big thing that I really think that this business model makes sense, right? A company that specializes in hosting and running these kind of events. But you point to Shawn Mercy, for example. You've been living in Stockton for the past 6 weeks. and I'm sure have a team of both probably, I don't know, workers or volunteers mix, or primarily volunteers. And that's been in the past for disc golf, the way that we make these kind of events succeed is on volunteers. How feasible do you see the scalability of this in, for example, you going elsewhere, whether that be, let's say, Jonesboro, right? You went out and helped with Jonesboro. How successful would that be if you're separating yourself so much and then having to rely on teams that are very local?
I think it's definitely a challenge. Our tournament is like every other major disc golf tournament that's ever been run, and we rely a lot on volunteers. So primarily the people helping out with the course build were volunteers. We have 125 plus volunteers signed up to support the event through the weekend, including breaking down the course on Monday. So that's a good question, and I really think it comes down to a good program, well-managed program, but also relationships and developing trust with people. Because, for example, I used to be the only one who would paint OB lines. And now, I have at least one person who I can trust to go out and make sure it's done correctly. But, it takes time to get there, right? And not every person has the same skill set or the same desire to contribute. So you just kind of got to filter through and develop those relationships. And I do think you got to be present. It's really hard to do remotely, especially, where we are today, which we're still, I think, largely a grassroots industry.
It's frustrating for us to not live here. He lives in East Bay and I live in San Francisco. And, it took me 3 hours to drive here last week to get to the tournament. And I loved when the lawsuit originally happened, people just said, why don't you guys just move the event to Nevada? Oh, okay. So just find a golf course that will work with us, and we'll build a championship caliber course, and that's only 4.5 to 5 hours away. Yeah, that's no problem. It's a lot more difficult. We have thousands and thousands of hours at this property, and I would love to stay here for the short-term future until Shangri-La Disc Golf Course in Northern California presents itself to us.
Yep. And if I could, I would like to thank everybody who has contributed to this event, the course build, as well as, going through this weekend. We could not do it without the Army that we have. And I really cherish a lot of the relationships that I've been able to, make through the time that I've spent here. It definitely is one thing that keeps me going.
It's got to be very gratifying to watch the tournament actually unfold after all the work that has to go in for months ahead of time.
It's very, very cool to drive the course now and to throw some holes. It looks fantastic out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple course questions and tournament questions, but I just want to follow up on one thing on the lawsuit. When you were named as a defendant in this lawsuit from Natalie Ryan, were you anticipating that, and how did you react to being named in the suit, even though it's not really your battle to fight, I suppose?
For me, it was like the levels of grief that you go through. At first, I didn't care, and then I was depressed, and then I was fearful, but we've been given assurances by the tour, and I'm not so concerned about it anymore. It was just for access. We were never cited for damages.
Yeah, and I don't think that we had anticipated being named in the lawsuit. I think we saw our event as being potentially affected, but we did not, hire a lawyer to look at the risk to our company and our tournament and really surface that until the complaint was filed.
Have you given any thought to just saying Natalie can play at the OTB Open?
Yeah, we've given thought to it.
We've thought.
Yeah, we've talked about every option.
Yes, exactly.
We talked about all, and when it first happened, we discussed every option at the table, including canceling FBO, decreasing the event to an A tier. We've considered all the options.
What do you? You don't have to answer this, I guess, but what are you expecting to see from the judge? Literally, maybe in the next hour.
I have no idea.
Coin flip.
It's going to be very interesting. Back to the course. Given the changes, I assume it hasn't changed so much that it feels dramatically different than a year ago, but what are the skills that you need to possess to succeed at the OTB Open?
I mean, low ceiling, like Calvin-esque type shots on the MPO level. I mean, distance, we're a golf course, and distance is definitely rewarding. Spin putting in the wind, I think, is really helpful.
A good roller.
Yeah, a good roller. I don't think it's as many as last year, but I think you'll be throwing plays with 4 to 8 rollers per round. Navigating OB, although it's not treacherous as like USDDC. Although I look at hole 18 and it gives me total USDDC vibes now, like when I see it set up. I would just distance accuracy.
And I think just dealing with the wind in general, because it could be dead on Sunday. It could be 20 miles an hour tomorrow.
Yeah, so. I don't think we've had a non-spin putter win at Stockton. Page, Rick. I'm sorry, Page, and then Eagle and Simon.
Very interesting. Well, any predictions about this year? We know Ricky. Page is playing as of now, but limited, and no Kristen.
I'd love to see a first-time winner on tour for both divisions. That would be really cool. That'd make me happy.
My picks, I'm not going to spoil them here, but I'm with you.
Yeah, I'd love to see a first-time winner on both sides. That would make me. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, and of course we have our preference, but I don't think we should necessarily say that here.
All right. Well, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much. Great to talk with you both, and good luck on the event. How much are beers on the Party Peninsula, by the way?
They're not crazy here. I think they charge it's a 16-ounce craft. There's a Kolsch and a session IPA, and I think they're $8.
Yeah, I don't know. Less than an airport.
I mean, maybe that sounds crazy to in Northern California. That's not that expensive.
Pretty normal in New York City too.
Yeah.
It's good beer. It's not just
right.
Yeah, Morgan territory. I can't believe you guys didn't ask about the trophies.
Oh, the trophies. No, Josh actually mentioned the trophy. What was it, Josh?
I think I saw a clip that Simon gave his disc to somebody else who's like bagging and throwing his trophy.
Yeah.
Well, then he got it back.
Oh, he did get it back after he switched MVP?
Yeah, after he signed with MVP, he got it back, but I haven't heard anything else.
Reel or whatever.
It's on the thumbnail of one of his videos when he made this announcement. He went down to Florida in the winter to get out of Massachusetts to practice. That. And it literally is in the thumbnail. So, as much as everyone gave us grief for having the worst trophy, it was the most famous trophy from last year. And a predicted trophy.
It's impressive.
Right?
So, I guess we'll ask him,
you going for the ultra oversized disc this year? Like a giant disc?
Yeah, like the one that's like this big.
Yeah.
We thought about leaning into the disc concept and having a bejeweled disc, but I'm not going to say exactly what it is. But it's handcrafted, artisan, locally sourced, with some precious metals into it.
There you go.
It's very on brand for the event.
Sounds like the 2022 Worlds Trophy.
Oh
no!
We saw those in person.
It was handcrafted with precious, maybe not so precious metals. Some sort of
metals.
It was a lot of metal.
They didn't have the worst trophy of the year. They had the world topped that.
It looked better in person.
Okay,
I'm gonna say but.
It did. I thought it looked fine in person.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Shawn, thank you very much, and we're looking forward to the event tomorrow.
You guys.
Awesome.
We are too.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back on the Upshot. Welcome back to the Upshot. It's just me for now. Josh is busy at work. It is late afternoon, early evening, depending on where you are in the country. And we are joined by Brian Sciacca, who is the lawyer for Natalie Ryan in her case against the PDGA Pro Tour and 1000 Rated Productions. Brian, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to join us here.
Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show, and I never thought I'd be on it. It's great to be here.
So the big news, of course, is that Natalie's request for a temporary restraining order has been granted by the federal district court in California. She will play at the OTB Open this weekend. So, first and foremost, I'm just curious to get your reaction. And obviously, Natalie's already posted on Instagram about how excited she is. How are you feeling?
I'm just really happy for Natalie. She's been through so much since the PDGA made its ruling, and just to have her back out on the course where she belongs, amongst the competition she belongs with, is just really gratifying to me.
Before we get into the ruling, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you decided to take this case on. My understanding is you're doing this pro bono. What motivated you to want to go out of your way to take on this, what could ultimately be a pretty important case?
Well, I was, it's funny you asked that. I had a round at our local league one day, and Natalie came up. It was after she had just done really well in something, and some people were really positive, and some people had some things that just I didn't like to hear. Just the way people have a way of talking about this issue that sometimes can be quite disturbing. So, and shortly after that, Natalie had posted something on Instagram about her struggles, and I said, if you ever need anything, I'd be happy to help. I don't know what I can do; it's not my area, but I'd be happy to help. It was just a comment, or actually it was a DM, and I don't think she ever read it. And I understand why she probably doesn't dive into her DMs very much, but she asked for legal help on Instagram a month or two later, and I responded in the replies there, and I said, hey, I'd be happy to help you if I can. I sent you a message a while ago, and then we just connected that way.
So there were a lot of questions leading up to this temporary restraining order hearing that happened yesterday, Wednesday, with kind of a flurry of filings all in a very short span of time. The tour and the PDGA both responding, making a lot of procedural claims about things like whether there was jurisdiction for this case to be heard in federal court in California, whether the TRO request came too late after the initial filing. The judge did address these issues, but basically said there's not enough weight for me to decide one way or the other on whether we have jurisdiction in this case or not. So we're going to proceed as though we do. And that the harm being done to Natalie outweighs the delay in the proceedings for the temporary restraining order itself. Based on what you understand right now, are you surprised that this ruling came down in your favor, given that the tour has shown that perhaps the federal court isn't the appropriate venue for this case in California?
Oh, well, it's a temporary restraining order is very difficult to get. So, when we talk about surprise, I'm pleasantly surprised that we were able to do this. I'm not surprised based on the law, because I think California law is pretty clear, and I think it's pretty clear in the judge's decision how he feels about that. As far as the jurisdictional issues, I mean, they're really not that important. There's no jurisdictional issue with the PDGA, and the judge ruled today that the DGPT is not an indispensable party. So even if they let the DGPT out of this particular action in this particular court, we can just go to state court. It doesn't do anything to our substantive claims. So, I was happy that my delay didn't cost Natalie a chance to be heard in court, because I was worried about that. But frankly, as I told you earlier, I have a full-time job. I did the best I could to get all this information to the court. But this is a case of first impression in the state, and there's not many cases that have been dealt with like this in the country. So it was a lot of work for Natalie and for me, and I'm a solo attorney. I don't have support staff, so we did the best we could, and I'm really glad that we were successful.
I have more questions about the substantive part of the the decision. But I do want to ask you about just what was your impression of the hearing yesterday? I know Jeff Spring testified, and that I think Natalie spoke as well. What all sort of transpired there, and how did the judge sort of run that hearing?
Well, the judge ran the hearing impeccably. When you go to a hearing like that, you don't know what to expect. So you have to have, an opening statement prepared in case you need to make that, and you have to be prepared to answer questions from the judge. And this judge had done a very careful examination of all of the pleadings and all of the documents that accompany it. It was very evident because he just started in with questions to me about things that he wanted to know, and then he went through the defendants and did the same thing. The defendants had some jurisdictional arguments they wanted to make, and the court allowed Mr. Spring to testify to that limited issue. And I thought the hearing was very well run, and I thought everybody had a chance to be heard. Natalie, and by the way, Natalie didn't speak. She had a statement prepared, and from an emotional perspective, I don't think she was able to give it, so I read it for her.
I see. So obviously the judge, and when you read through the document, it's very clear, seems fairly persuaded by the substantive claims that Natalie has made here, with the California UNRRA Act and its anti-discrimination policies kind of clearly stating that, you're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of being transgender. And the judge kind of sort of cast aside many of the arguments that the Pro Tour and the PDGA made as to why that policy didn't violate the UNRRA Act. I think it's clear. I want to make clear to the audience, this is not the actual opinion of the final case decision. This is only a ruling in the temporary restraining order. But given that you mentioned earlier, it's hard to get these granted. Do you think this signals that the court is prepared to rule in your favor in the overall case?
Well, I would never presume to tell anybody what a court's going to do, because that's within the purvey of the judge. But, his analysis of the law and the defenses provided by the tour and the PDGA, I think does signal something to them. And I hope they hear what he said. They can continue to try to justify based on, their justification in court yesterday was the PDGA's medical committee subcommittee's report. And the judge had very pointed questions about that. He pointed out, as we have pointed out since that report was issued, that report is just a comparison of cisgender men to cisgender women. It doesn't have any analysis of transgender people or transgender athletes and their abilities and strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't have any analysis of the benefits of inclusion of transgender people, and those are the things that are the Olympic guidelines that the PDGA and DGPT are relying on call for, and they just ignored it.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting to see that the judge wrote extensively about the International Olympic Committee's guidelines that they put out there. That was kind of the basis for a lot of sports governing bodies to go back and review their policies on transgender participation, which is sort of what prompted the PDGA to do theirs. And it has a lot of things in there about like assuming inclusion first. And the judge wrote about a lot of that. And I think correctly pointed out that the PDGA Medical Committee report doesn't address those topics in many cases, or addresses them in a very poor way. And, for that, I have to say, I'm sort of surprised that the PDGA and the, in particular is doubling down on this medical committee report as the basis for their policy when it's such a poorly written document.
I'll be honest, it surprised me too. I agree with you that it's surprising, but they don't have any other basis to justify their policy. So they have to rely on something.
What happens now? Obviously, Natalie's going to compete this weekend. I've heard rumors that some players are going to boycott and drop out of playing in FPO. I haven't actually seen if that's happened yet. I mean, it's literally been in maybe 2 hours since we've gotten the opinion. She plays this weekend. What comes next?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. It's been such a whirlwind this last week. I don't know exactly how we go from here, and that's really up to the defendants. I can't make their policy. I can't change their policy, but I will say that one of the next stops on the tour is in Minnesota, and we've discussed extensively the J.C. Cooper case. And now that we've done this here, we know we can do it elsewhere, especially in places where the laws protect people who are transgender, including Vermont, where the World Championships are going to be held. So, we're going to continue the fight. We hope we don't have to. We hope that this ruling would have some kind of influence on the organizations involved and get them to, make a change. The only other option for them is to have a tour that doesn't go to any states that have laws like this. And I don't think that's in the best interest of anybody, the competitors or the sport, especially.
This Stockton Declaration signed by a large number of touring FPO players was filed as part of the paperwork, sort of expressing that they didn't want transgender women to compete in FPO and sort of supporting the PDGA policy and the DGBT policy. Do you have any thoughts on that? Given that clearly there's a lot of Natalie's competitors who do not want her to be competing. I think we knew that maybe intuitively, but now we have very clear evidence of that.
I do have thoughts on that. Of course, I think a lot of this, of feelings like that are based on misinformation and a misunderstanding of the science. And I would encourage those people who sign that to really talk to people who are transgender and hear about what they have to go through in order to get to the places that they are in their lives. I would advise them to read the recent study that came out from Canada that really analyzed all the literature on this topic and concluded that transgender women do not have a significant advantage in competitive sports. And I would encourage them just to look, look for some empathy in their heart and think about how other people feel. I'm not, people have opinions and that's fine, but the way that declaration was written to misgender my client and to, call her a man and do things like that, I think it's not necessary. It doesn't help anybody do anything. And I hope that, they can reconsider their position on that. Katrina Allen's the one who's been out front on all this. And, she submitted a declaration to the Supreme Court in which she called my client a man and talked about the extreme trauma she went through, realizing that she could never compete again. Katrina Allen's a 2-time world champion who has beaten my client 88% of the time she's played her. And she's complaining about trauma. And to me, it's just nonsensical. So, I feel like, Natalie's one person. It's not like the whole sport is being overrun by people who they don't want to be there. All this hate is directed at one person. And frankly, it's a lot for Natalie to deal with. It's a lot of weight on her shoulders.
Are you concerned at all about any further blowback on this, given the ruling from the judge here?
I mean, I'm always concerned about my client's safety and security. I mean, if I'm sure you've heard about what happened in Colorado, and again, she's throwing frisbees in the park. She's not hurting anybody. She's trying to live her life and compete in the sport that she loves. Natalie, as her lawyer, I have to ask questions like, "Hey, Natalie, do you just want to let this go and ask them for some money? Because, I can see that this is taking a toll on you. And she said, no, I'm not in this just for me. And it's not about money. I want to help people like me. I want to show them that we can do things and rise above this hate. And, I'm really proud of her for that.
I think this is my last question. Do you get the sense that this case could become a bigger story, that it could go national and take on greater significance because of the lack of case law on this topic?
Well, I definitely think it should have some influence and hopefully in the legal community, and especially in states where there are protections for transgender women. I think, it should have some influence. I think, yes, probably to answer your question, I mean, there is a certain segment of the population that likes to make this issue more than it should be, and likes to, spread hate about this issue. And I'm sure that those kind of organizations are going to pick up on this case and do the things that they do. But, there's nothing we can do about that, I guess.
Well, Brian, thanks so much for coming on, and congrats to you and on the win in court, and very, very interesting stuff as we continue to kind of all figure this out in the country, it feels like.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for being one of the places where people can talk about this issue rationally and with some empathy. I also just, I'm sorry Josh isn't here, but, send my thanks to Josh as well, because, I really enjoyed listening to the pod last week. In fact, I was listening to the podcast on the plane on the way to court, and, it was relieving to hear people talk about this issue in a rational way. Thanks again.
I'll pass it on. Thank you so much. Brian Sciacca with us here on the Upshot. I've got some thoughts of my own on this ruling coming up next. Welcome back to the Upshot. So again, Josh, unfortunately, is working right now, so it's just me for a little bit. Just wanted to give some further thoughts on the judge granting the temporary restraining order for Natalie Ryan and what that's going to mean about this case overall. So I think the big thing, the Pro Tour and the PDGA primarily focused on getting this temporary restraining order motion thrown out on various procedural grounds, that it was filed too late, that the court didn't have jurisdiction in federal court in the terms of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, because they have members of the DGPT's parent limited liability corporation that live in Virginia. So basically the rule is, because Natalie Ryan lives in Virginia, if the Pro Tour has any owners at all that live in Virginia, then the case cannot be heard in federal court outside of Virginia. It's a complicated, Brian basically said it doesn't matter, and that may be true, but they try to get it thrown out on these grounds, but they didn't do a very good job of actually making the case. So when you look at what they did, and I'll read directly from the opinion from the judge, and they acknowledge a skepticism as to the jurisdiction, which would basically deny this claim outright, because they would say, well, we can't make a ruling here. DGP, to support the argument that the court lacks subject matter jurisdiction, DGPT provided a declaration attesting that the Disc Golf Pro Tour has members who are citizens of Virginia. And that came from Margaret E. Holland, who's a part of the tour. The declaration provides no information as to how or why Ms. Holland has this knowledge, what the knowledge is based on, and importantly provides no documentary evidence supporting the statement. During the hearing on this matter, DGPT called Mr. Jeff Spring, of course the CEO, to further support this argument. Mr. Spring provided the names of 3 individuals he believed to both be members of the DGPT and citizens of Virginia. This included Mr. Steve Dodge, who Mr. Spring was certain lived in Virginia. In response to this court's order, DGPT filed supporting evidence allegedly demonstrating 4 of its members are citizens of Virginia. This filing included a declaration from Mr. Spring, who noted that Mr. Steve Dodge, in fact, does not live in Virginia and has not lived in Virginia since 2003. The document also contained photocopied driver's licenses from alleged members and unofficial/uncertified tax forms. Though the court has some skepticism as to jurisdiction in this case, there is simply insufficient evidence at this time to establish a lack of subject matter jurisdiction. So, speaking to some lawyer friends, it does sound like this is a bit unusual, that because in the affidavit that was submitted after the hearing, there are names of 4 members of Steve Dodge's family who have Virginia addresses and have tax forms from Virginia. But I have the sense that the judge was skeptical of the entire argument after Jeff Spring got on the stand and said Steve Dodge lived in Virginia, which is totally crazy. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and I ask you where Steve Dodge lives, most of you probably know the answer, and the answer is Massachusetts, where he runs Maple Hill. So then they have to backtrack and say, well, actually, no, he doesn't. I realize now he doesn't live in Virginia. That's very poor from the Pro Tour. And it's not a surprise that the judge was a bit skeptical of the entire case when that was one of the main pieces of evidence, something that was just false. So that's a really interesting side note here. So they basically got all those procedural issues washed away, and it came down to the substance of the actual claims from Ryan. And it talks about the California UNRRA Civil Rights Act, which says that, quote, all persons within the jurisdiction of California are free and equal, and no matter what their sex, race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, disability, medical condition, genetic information, marital status, sexual orientation, citizenship, primary language, or immigration status, are entitled to the full and equal accommodations, advantages, facilities, privileges, or services in all business establishments of every kind whatsoever. And so it went on to talk about how this looked a lot to the judge like discrimination under the UNRRA Civil Rights Act, and expressed serious concerns about the way that this policy was put together by the PDGA. I'm going to scroll down a little bit further here, and we have the whole case opinion posted on Multi-World Disc Golf. If you want to go and read the full thing yourself, you can. So as I was mentioning in the conversation with Brian, it talked a little bit about the IOC and how the International Olympic Committee kind of like set the overall framework for how sports governing bodies should be thinking about putting together rules around transgender participation. And it says, and again, I'm quoting from the opinion, this framework states everyone, regardless of their gender identity, expression, and or sex variation, should be able to participate in sports safely and without prejudice. The IOC counsels for inclusion and the prevention of discrimination. The PDGA asserts the rules were created in response to the IOC framework and represented during the hearing that the PDGA policy is in line with this framework. However, when the policy is compared to the IOC framework, there appear to be significant discrepancies. The IOC framework mandates, quote, the physical, psychological, and mental well-being of athletes should be prioritized when establishing eligibility criteria. However, the PDGA Medical Subcommittee report explicitly states, quote, it does not include sociological, psychological, or cultural issues surrounding transgender participation in competitive athletics. It goes on. I'm not going to go that much deeper into it here, but what I will point out is that the PDGA relying on the medical subcommittee report is going to be a real problem for them now and in all future court cases. Basically, I have a feeling that wherever we end up at some point down the road, and we don't know what the outcome of this case is going to be in California. If they file in Minnesota, maybe there's going to be more outcome there. But the fundamental problem, and way back when the PDGA policy first came out, we must have talked about this for 30 minutes on this podcast. The PDGA Medical Subcommittee report that underpins the decision that they made and the policy that they created is so bad, is so poorly written, is so poorly researched that it is embarrassing to the organization that they have to submit it to a federal district court. And for a judge to look at that document, they're going to be more appalled than I was. It is a big problem for them because you can't have that be the foundation of your policy. And that's not to say that they cannot have a policy around transgender participation, or even that the policy that they have may someday hold up in court. And we have maybe years before we determine those things. And frankly, they're probably going to be determined by the Supreme Court at some point. Probably not in this case, but in some case. We don't exactly know yet. And the science is still emerging, as we've talked about many times. But the fundamental fact is that the IOC framework that was laid out by the International Olympic Committee is very specific about what it is that they want you to do. And the medical subcommittee report does not check those boxes. And the judge recognized that. And despite a lot of things that could have ruled against Natalie Ryan's case here, whether it be the how late it was filed for this temporary restraining order, the jurisdictional questions, a number of other procedural arguments, there's a lot of ways this could have been knocked down. And the fact that the judge basically threw all those to the side and said, you know what? She should play this weekend, and I grant this restraining order, shows you just how weak the PDGA medical committee report is and why they're going to have to probably go back to the drawing board and do this whole thing again. So that's where we stand right now. Very curious to get your thoughts. Obviously, people are going to have very strong opinions on this one way or the other, but this is why the judges look at this stuff, folks. Like, it's not just about how you feel personally about it. It's also about the laws that are in place. And there's a reason that this case was filed in California. They have a very strong case as to this being discriminatory under California state law. And I think that's a very clear signal today as to why they may win this case if it goes to court and it goes to trial later on. So we're going to leave it there. When we come back, we are going to dive into our OTB picks and more. So stay with us right here on the Upshot. Welcome back to the Upshot. It is time for 30-second rule, where we get 30 seconds to talk about each topic. And if we go over, there is no repercussions. Josh, take it away.
Yeah, first up, ratings update happened. I hope everybody's got a favorable bump. But one bump that is the big news here, Kristen Tatar has jumped up to 991 rated. This puts her the highest in the world. Owen Scoggins at 977, so very well clear of that. But we've been talking about that path to 1,000, and this is a good indication. A 4-point bump at her level is a remarkable jump, and I think bodes well if she can continue playing at this level.
And everybody's talking about it now. Can she get to 1,000? Mm-hmm. We broke that all down on a show a few weeks ago. It's going to take a high level of play for an extended period of time. She cannot come out and lay even partial eggs like she did at Jonesboro. She's going to have to play great for 3 months straight. And as some of those older rounds from Europe drop off from last year, there's a chance. And even if she doesn't get to 1,000, she could set the record for the highest rated FPO player ever.
That is true.
What is the record? Is it 996? I
thought it was 997.
It might be 997. Paige was very close. To that 1,000 mark. So Kristen's got a shot at it.
She really does. Let me pull this real fast. Page 996. You were right, Charlie.
There it is.
Yeah. So only 5 points off of the highest all time for an FPO player.
There you go.
Next up, Masters Cup happened this weekend, formerly in a long-time tour event, but no longer is. Greg Barsby gets the win in a playoff over Alden Harris. Owen Scoggins gets the win over Katrina Allen. Man, are we shocked at all, though, that that's a course for Owen Scoggins?
Yeah.
Woods.
And maybe for Greg Barsby.
Yeah.
Greg Barsby, he's from California. Mm-hmm. He knows how to carve it up out there on those kinds of courses. Masters Cup rules, man. I need the tour to get that back on. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I know, there's all these problems, but give it points at least.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be live streamed and everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
fine. You know, just like have Central Coast, who they did the coverage this weekend. You know, still, it's not like it didn't get filmed, and there were still lots of good pros there. But it just, I don't know. It just feels like it should be on tour.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Give it the mini points. I don't know. There should be a classics tour that gives you a few points here and there.
There you go. Yeah, or like the collaborator series that just is 10 points and
Yeah.
right.
Like
there's basically
minimal,
no
but
standards.
There's a reason to have it. I get why they wouldn't do this, but it's sad that it's gone. I mean, this was the national tour course that never left. It started there in 03 and it never left. And now it's gone. That just seems sad to me.
Yeah, I agree. 303 Open happened in Colorado as well. Aaron Gossage gets the win over Joel Freeman. Natalie Ryan gets the win over Emma Arp. This is A tier. Yep, over in Colorado.
Yeah, there were some big news from that tournament. There was some anti-trans protesters there who were shouting at Natalie Ryan, kind of making a scene, and they were like not disc golfers. Like this story has started to find national interest, and so there were people there, sort of attacking, screaming, he's a man, stuff like that. This is it's just a toxic environment, unfortunately.
Manabu Kajiyama, excuse me. Manabu Kajiyama just won his 16th Japan Nationals tournament. This comes at the same time that he is also the highest rated pro in the world right now at 1050 rated. So the two hitting at the same time. I mean, 16 national titles that's so cool. PDGA number 8139. So already, I mean, a pretty lower than Simon Lizotte, who has the lowest number of any pro. That's a current and actively touring pro. He plays 10 events a year. So I think it's pretty impressive that he's able to maintain that 1050 rating playing as much as he does, right? It's not just one tournament and then done. It's a handful of tournaments. And I'm looking at his PDGA page. Manabu is registered for the World Championships this year.
Great.
So I don't know if he has played in Worlds before, but it doesn't look like it. So he'll be coming down to the United States to play Worlds. So excited to have him.
Yeah, I'm hyped. I mean, I don't really think he's like 1050 good, not to be a hater. He has played Worlds a number of times before, Josh. A lot of times, in fact. It's been a few years since COVID.
It's been since COVID. Yes, yeah.
But he's played. I don't know how many. I can't even count. Like 10 times, maybe more.
Okay.
His best finish at a major is second at the 2008 Japan Open. He was third at European Open in 2007. He was fourth at the Aussie Open in 2017. His best Worlds finish, I believe, is 16th. So yeah, I mean, he's a tremendous player, and by all accounts, a great guy. So I'm glad to hear he's going to be coming back, and hey, maybe he'll show up and win the damn thing.
That would be so cool.
That would be very cool.
That would be the coolest story. Copenhagen Open, the first event on the European Pro Tour, also happened this past weekend. Mauri Vilman and Katie Asalu. Katie Asalu.
We've seen Katie Asalu a little bit in the U.S.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I'm excited to see what's going on with the European tournaments this year. We got Macbeth going over there, and we got the PDGA Euro Tour starting up, and I think we're going to see like a real scene in Europe. Like there's going to be players who start to become stars in Europe, and then maybe they'll eventually find their way to the U.S. as well.
I hope so. I really hope that creates an opportunity where you get a really robust European scene that develops and gives the players the kind of sponsorships necessary to do those kind of things. So that's it for 30-second rule.
All right. Well, that means it's time for our picks for the OTB Open. We're back out on the wide expanses, lots of airspace, but also technical. You know, they have found the best way to use this terrain to make actually difficult, interesting holes. A lot of rollers. We saw a lot of rollers the last few years. When Eagle won in 2021, it was just roller city out there. So time to make our picks. Josh, you want to go first or second?
I'll go first.
Take it away.
First. I'm going to go FPO first. I've got Ella Hansen in my 3 spot. Now, it's noteworthy. Ricky is still out with Lyme disease. Val Mondahano is still not playing due to the ankle injury. And Kristen Tatar is taking this event off.
And at the moment, Paige is still registered, but
correct.
She posted that she's feeling a little bit better, but is like, it's going to be game time decision. It wouldn't be surprising to see her withdraw last minute or even have to drop out of the tournament once she started as she continues to deal with the arm issues.
Correct. And I think it's pretty noteworthy because last year it was Paige Pierce. Natalie Ryan was second place, but took a late double bogey that kind of removed her from contention. And other than that, Paige Pierce was just a mile clear of the field. And so, you know, it definitely changes up the picks for this year and thinking about that a little bit harder to. But Ella Hansen still played well here. You know, as was noted in the interview, there have been some changes to the course that make it a little bit more attackable. Ella Hansen tied for 4th last year here. And so, you know, she may not have the overwhelming distance advantage. I still think it's going to be to her benefit, though. And Ella Hansen has had a good season thus far. So I've got Ella in the 3. In my 2 spot, I've got Owen Scoggins. Now, this pick I do for 2 reasons. Number 1, the changes to the course. You know, Owen has been playing well, and I think that those changes are going to favor her. But number 2, last year, Juliana Korver was in 3rd.
That's true.
Right? Like, not known for the distance, and now surrounded by some big throwers at the top with Paige, Natalie, and Ella. But Alexis Mondahano had 4th, Missy Gannon had 6, Owen had 7. I'm not terribly close to winning by any means, but still up on the leaderboard. And so at this point, I think Owen really does have a shot, especially if Paige drops, Kristen's out of the field. I think Owen has good chances to be finishing up on the podium this week. But my winner is going to be Haley King.
Okay.
Haley King comes off the loss on the playoff, and she played really poorly here last year. But Haley King was just not her in form last season, especially at different parts of the season, right? You would have Haley King play out of her mind, right? Like Haley King does, and then she would just play terrible. And that up and down is kind of what Haley King is known for, but I think the consistency on tour is showing that Haley King is she is playing an amazing season thus far. And I really like Haley King at this track, so I got Haley King to take down the win.
There you go. Okay, so here are my picks. I'm going to go Katrina Allen in 3rd place. Kat was 2nd here in 2021. Didn't play as well last year, but especially with some of the heavy hitters out of the field, I think she's certainly capable of winning the whole thing. In my 2 spot, I've got Holland Handley. I mean, Holland's straight up been one of the best players on tour this season. She's been a top 5 player on tour. I think the course sets up great for her game. And so, I don't know. I think this is a great chance for her. But I'm going to go with a double H at the top. I've got Ella Hansen winning this thing.
Let's go.
I've been waiting for this tournament because I think that Ella or Holland is going to win it. And so I've got them top 2 on my podium. It's the right course and layout for them. With Paige hurt, Kristen gone, I just think that this is their chance. And they got to know that too. They got to feel confident the way they've been playing. So I think that we're finally going to see another first-time tour winner, and it should be a lot of fun. Over in MPO, I'm also going to get a little out of the box here, Josh. In my 3 spot, I've got the Goose, Aaron Gossage.
Yes,
the win at the 303 Open. He played pretty well here last year. I think maybe he's starting to find a rhythm. It feels very encouraging to see him go out there and beat Joel Freeman in Colorado. I love his chances as we get back out into the Open, and he can kind of use that power forehand to attack this course. In the 2 spot, I've got last year's champion, Simon Lizotte. Can we just remember that it's only been 1 year since Simon started winning again? And like, he has won so much in a 1 calendar year. He's won 5 Elite Series in that stretch. Mm-hmm. That's insane. I think he could do it again. But in my 1 spot, I got another first-time tour winner for you, Josh.
Okay.
Anthony Barella is going to take this thing down. I think this is the chance. He has been close here in the past. He played great here a year ago. You cannot deny that his game is better than it was 1 year ago as well. We've seen him in contention already this season. This is the time, Josh. Brand new champs, both tournaments.
I'll make comments on that in just a second. On my picks, I've got Calvin Heimberg in the 3. Calvin's consistency is
boring. No,
you're right. But I'm also beating you in the points.
He's always on the
podium. I got Calvin in the 3. I actually have Anthony Barella in the 2 because I agree with everything you said, and then I think he's going to choke.
Josh,
so if he is in the lead and finishes in second for whatever reason, I am going to feel so vindicated in this pick. Look, I agree with everything you said about Anthony Barella here, but I just don't think Anthony Barella's got that dog in him this season, and so you are not going to see me put Anthony Barella on the podium. And I'll eat my words. I will come on this show and I will admit that I'm wrong. I will admit that Anthony Barella is a top tier player. Whatever you want, I'll get an AB shirt, a hat, whatever, and I will wear it on the show.
You have to get an AB hat. The snake hat.
Deal.
And you have to wear it on the show.
Done. I like AB's logo. I like too. AB as a person. I think it's a clean logo. I will absolutely buy an AB hat. Like I feel bad about this because I do really like Anthony Barella, but I just don't think he's got it in him. Eagle McMahon's got my 1 though. He won in 2021, won pretty handedly in 2021, didn't play it last year. Eagle McMahon is when he first we got to make fun of you for the no pros will shoot double digit over under.
Oh.
That was the year Shawn Jack comes on. He's like, man, Amside 1020 even rated, is 1020 rated with an even round. And Charlie's like, over under, no one will shoot double digits. And Eagle comes out and shoots a 13 under in round 1.
And he did it in round 1. That's messed up, man.
He does 13, 10, and 9 and just obliterates this course. So I really like Eagle here. And he's looks like he's coming in, like kind of really starting to pick up and come back into Eagle form. And so I think this is going to be where he peaks. If not here, I probably will have him near the top, like previewing for Portland Open. He's won that tournament as well. I like Eagle in this stretch, and
I did too.
Will probably have him in my podium a lot for the next couple weeks.
All right. Well, there's our picks. OTB Open begins tomorrow. 3-round tournament. Enjoy it, everybody. We'll be back with you on Sunday night for our live Rapid React show as we break down everything at the OTB Open for Ultiworld Disc Golf subscribers. Go to discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe to check that out and get our full back catalog of all of our subscription episodes inside the circle. And so Josh and I will talk to you then. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.